Download this code from codegive.com, link in the description below. Reading JSON data asynchronously with JavaScript's async/await. This tutorial delves into how to effectively read and parse JSON data using JavaScript's async/await syntax. This modern approach simplifies asynchronous operations, making your code cleaner, more readable, and easier to reason about compared to traditional callback-based or promise chaining methods. Why async/await? Improved readability. Async/await makes asynchronous code look and behave a bit more like synchronous code, improving readability and making it easier to follow the logic. Error handling. Uses standard try, catch blocks for error handling, which is more familiar and easier to manage than error handling in promise chains. Debugging. Debugging is simpler because the code executes in a more sequential manner. You can step through asynchronous code with your debugger as if it were synchronous. Prerequisites. Basic JavaScript knowledge. Familiarity with variables, functions, objects, arrays, and control flow, if/else, loops. Promises. A general understanding of JavaScript promises is beneficial as async/await builds on top of them. You don't need to be an expert, but knowing what they represent will help. Key concepts. JSON, JavaScript object notation, a lightweight data interchange format that is easy for humans to read and write, and easy for machines to parse and generate. Async function. A function declared with the async keyword. This keyword enables the use of the await keyword inside the function. An async function always returns a promise, implicitly or explicitly. Await keyword. Used inside an async function to pause the execution of the function until a promise resolves. The await keyword returns the resolved value of the promise. If the promise rejects, the await expression throws an error. Fetch API. A modern web API for making network requests, HTTP requests, to fetch resources from a server, including JSON data. Fetch returns a promise that resolves to the response to that request. Step-by-step guide. 1. Setting up your environment, HTML and JavaScript. Create an HTML file, example index.html. Create a JavaScript file, example script.js. 2. Creating sample JSON data, optional, for demonstration. You can either fetch data from an existing API or create a local JSON file. For simplicity, let's create a local JSON file named data.json. Make sure this data.json file is in the same directory as your index.html and script.js files. 3. Fetching JSON data with fetch and async/await. Now, let's write the JavaScript code to fetch and display the JSON data. Add this to your script.js file. Explanation. One data container we get a reference to the div element in our HTML where we'll display the fetched data. 2. Async function fetched data. This defines an asynchronous function named fetchData. The async keyword allows us to use await inside this function. This function is responsible for fetching, parsing, and displaying the JSON data. 3. Try, catch block. The entire process is wrapped in a try, catch block to handle potential errors that might occur during the fetching or parsing of the data. This is crucial for robust error handling. 4. Await fetch, data.json, fetch, data.json, initiates an HTTP request to retrieve the data.json file. It returns a promise that resolves to the response object. *await pauses the execution of the fetchData function until the fetch promise resolves. *the resolved response object, containing the server's response, is assigned to the response variable. *important, fetch by default, only rejects the promise for network errors, example server not found. It doesn't reject for HTTP status codes like 404 or 500. That's why we need to explicitly check the response.ok property. 5 If response.ok, this checks if the HTTP response status code indicates success, example 200 OK. If the response is not successful, example 404 not found, 500 internal server error, we throw an error to be caught by the catch block. This is essential for handling server-side errors. 6 Await response.json, *. Response.json is a method of the response object that reads the response body and parses it as JSON. It also returns a promise. *await pauses the execution of fetched data until the response.json promise resolves. The parse JSON data, which will be a JavaScript array in our example, is assigned to the JSON data variable. 7 Display data, JSON data, * this function, defined later, takes the parse JSON data and dynamically creates HTML to display it in the data container. 8 Console.error, error fetching or parsing data, error, * if an error occurs in the try block, example network error, JSON parsing error, the catch block will execute. It logs the error to the console for debugging. 9 Data container.text content equals error loading data, * in the catch block, we also display a user-friendly error message in the data container to inform the user that something went wrong. 10 Function display data, * this function takes the parse JSON data, an array of objects in this case, and generates HTML to display it in a list format. It iterates through the array and creates elements for each item. You can customize this function to display the data in any way you want. 11 Fetched data, * finally, we call the fetched data function to initiate the entire process. How to run the code * 1 Save the index.html, script.js, and data.json files in the same directory. 2 Open index.html in your web browser. 3 You should see the JSON data displayed in the data container in a list format. If there's an error, you'll see the error loading data message. Check your browser's developer console, usually accessed by pressing F12, for more detailed error information. Alternative approach, fetching from a real API, example using a public API. If you don't want to use a local JSON file, you can fetch data from a real API. Here's an example using the JSON placeholder API, which provides fake online REST API for testing and prototyping. Key differences in this example *. API endpoint * the fetch function now uses the URL https://json placeholder.typicode.com/users to fetch data from the JSON placeholder API. Data structure * the structure of the JSON data returned by the API is different. The displayData function has been updated to access the name, email, and address.city properties of each user object. You'll need to adjust the displayData function to match the structure of the JSON data you are fetching from your API. Important considerations *. CORS, cross-origin resource sharing when fetching data from a different domain, origin, than your web page, you might encounter CORS issues. CORS is a security mechanism that prevents web pages from making requests to a different domain without permission. If you encounter CORS errors, you'll need to configure the server, where the API is hosted, to allow cross-origin requests from your domain. This is usually done by setting appropriate HTTP headers in the server's response. Error handling always include comprehensive error handling to catch potential issues, such as network errors, invalid JSON data, or server errors. Display meaningful error messages to the user and log errors to the console for debugging. Loading indicators while data is being fetched, it's good practice to display a loading indicator, example a spinner, to let the user know that something is happening in the background. You can easily add this by showing / hiding a loading element in your HTML before and after the fetched data call. User interface updates when updating the user interface with fetched data, be mindful of performance, especially when dealing with large data sets. Consider techniques like pagination or virtual scrolling to efficiently display the data. API rate limiting be aware of API rate limits. Some APIs restrict the number of requests you can make within a specific time period. If you exceed the rate limit, you may receive an error response. Implement appropriate strategies to handle rate limiting, such as retrying requests after a delay or using caching. Summary. This tutorial provides a comprehensive guide to reading JSON data asynchronously using JavaScript's async/await syntax. By following these steps and understanding the key concepts, you can efficiently and effectively fetch and process JSON data in your web applications. Remember to prioritize error handling, consider CORS issues, and optimize your code for performance when dealing with real-world APIs.